Okay, hi. So I know it's been, yikes, 8 months since I last uploaded a video. In my defense, I don't have an editor and I edit these videos in between classes. It'll be a miracle if I get this out on time for the release of Tears of the Kingdom. Anyway, if you haven't watched any of the trailers, spoilers, I guess. It's not really spoilers because they put out trailers for it, but if you care about that, spoilers. But we're going to talk about my theory, how Tears of the Kingdom is a reunification of the timeline event. I know I've been clowning this theory since Age of Calamity, but I believe that this is a reunification event that causes Breath of the Wild to be placed up at the end of all three timelines. Hold up, Anya. First, let's discuss the timeline itself. The Zelda timeline contains every mainline Zelda game, beginning with Skyward Sword and ending with Breath of the Wild. The split that would necessitate a reunification event would be Ocarina of Time, creating three distinct timelines influenced by key events in that game. The first and most controversial is the Downfall timeline, taking place when Ganondorf has access to all three pieces of the Triforce, all of the sages are awakened, and Ganondorf has transformed into Ganon. All of these cause events like games of A Link to the Past to line up with the ending of the Hero of Time falling to Ganon. Then we have the Child timeline, which takes place immediately after Zelda sends Link back to the beginning. In this, Link warns Zelda about Ganondorf's plan, and while Hyrule is saved, it leaves Link without his fairy and directly influences the next sequel. The adult timeline is left without a hero as the result of Zelda's actions. Ganondorf is reincarnated and causes terror. Without the hero spirit, a great flood happens. This is the only timeline to feature a different Link, as the Link featured in Wind Waker does not have the hero spirit. By becoming the hero, he forges himself into the new hero spirit. Not only that, it means that the Hyrule featured in the adult timeline after Wind Waker is not the same Hyrule that was founded by Link and Zelda in Skyward Sword. Instead, New Hyrule, as it is referred to in Spirit Tracks, is founded by Link and Tetra after the events of Phantom Hourglass. This creates a problem. Now, Breath of the Wild canonically takes place at the end of all of these timelines. Wait. Hold on. How can Breath of the Wild take place at the end of all of these timelines? After all, we've already had canonical endings for each of these timelines. Zelda 2 is the canonical end of the Downfall timeline, Four Swords Adventures is the canonical end of the Child timeline, and Spirit Tracks is the canonical end of the Adult timeline. All three of these games bear the distinct mark of being the end of each timeline, and thus each of them have no Ganon in them. Zelda 2 is about stopping the return of Ganon, Four Swords Adventures has Vati, and Spirit Tracks has Maladam. Not only that, Breath of the Wild is famously about stopping the return of Ganon. This is why I propose that the reunification is Tears of the Kingdom, because it would be such a huge event. The event wouldn't even be a new concept, and it would parallel with Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time's events quite nicely. So, if you've never played Ocarina of Time, or somehow have never heard of Ocarina of Time, the first part of the game features Link tracking down three gems that belong to three races of Hyrule, the Zora Sapphire, the Goron Ruby, and he comes to Zelda with the Kikuri Emerald. So, with him tracking all three of these down, Ganondorf becomes able to access the Sacred Realm within the Temple of Time, thanks to the actions of Zelda and Link. And much like in Ocarina of Time, in Breath of the Wild, Ganondorf is only able to take control of the Divine Beasts and the Guardians because they had excavated them from the ground. So, in a sense, Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild feature an event that causes Ganon to be able to win. During this, Ganondorf has reigned over Hyrule for 7 years in Ocarina of Time. In Breath of the Wild, Ganon had managed to rule over Hyrule with an iron fist for 100 years. And Tears of the Kingdom, being able to create another parallel with this fan favorite game, would be incredible, because unlike Ocarina of Time, instead of splitting the timeline, it would reunite the timeline. This also would help to confirm Breath of the Wild's placement on the timeline itself. After all, each games that fall within a specific spot on the timeline are there because of subtle clues. Skyward Sword featured moments where Link went back in time, and the climax of the game is Zelda, now with her memories of being Hylia, goes back in time to slumber to keep Demise imprisoned. Speaking of Skyward Sword, we have the fan favorite dungeon that involves the time shift stones. By striking them with an arrow or a sword, Link can then transport through time. It is theorized that these time shift stones are what the Ocarina of Time is made out of, but I don't have enough time to go into that fan theory. The other thing to note is that blue that the time shift stones are made of is similar to the Gate of Time, which Link goes through at the end of the game, specifically so he can go meet up with Zelda again. And this is where Skyward Sword begins to really show how it connects to the rest of the games as the beginning of the timeline. So during all of this, Zelda then reveals to Link a bunch of stuff that we the player have already been aware of for a while, including the 3 goddesses that wound up making the Triforce. So the thing is, this 3 golden goddess myth is not new to the series. It was first addressed in Ocarina of Time when trying to explain where the Triforce came from. So, in Skyward Sword, Zelda is basically confirming that the myth of the Golden Goddesses are true. Farore, Din, and Nehru are real gods who have existed, and while this is certainly the case still in Ocarina of Time, this elevates it from subtext to actual text, the same way that Zelda is Hylia is elevated from subtext to text. In this scene, Zelda explicitly states that she is Hylia. This is also true of Ocarina of Time Zelda, and it is true of Breath of the Wild Zelda. Both of them have a sealing power designed, well, all 3 of them really, have a sealing power that is designed to keep evil at bay. This specifically refers in Skyward Sword to Demise. In Ocarina of Time, it refers to Ganondorf, and in Breath of the Wild, it refers to Calamity Ganon. So, what would this mean for a reunification event? Well, as noted, Zelda has the ability to travel through time explicitly in all 3 games. Zelda slumbers in Skyward Sword to keep Demise in prison. So, You may be wondering why I am citing these two games specifically to talk about how Tears of the Kingdom is a reunification event. Well, aside from Skyward Sword, of course, taking place at the beginning of the timeline, and Ocarina of Time being this game that causes the split in the first place, there are also a lot of parallels from Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild. And a lot of fans have already pointed out that the architect featured in Skyward Sword has been found weathered and decayed in Breath of the Wild. Other fans have speculated this is because the concept is that time is going to be flat like an Ouroboros, but I don't entirely agree with that theory. I believe that they are deliberately referencing these games to point out how Breath of the Wild taking place at the end of all three timelines at the split is, well, impossible. I think by doing this, they are enabling us to notice all the ways that Breath of the Wild draws its inspiration story-wise from Skyward Sword. After all, Breath of the Wild does open with Link being asked to wake up by none other than Zelda. Not only that, Link is being asked to rescue Zelda from something that she has effectively done to herself. She is the one who imprisoned herself specifically to keep Ganon or Demise at bay. In fact, in Breath of the Wild, when Zelda goes to imprison herself with Calamity Ganon, we see the Triforce glow on the back of her hand. The Triforce is, after all, the power that both Ganondorf and Demise seeked specifically. Not only that, the first ability we're shown in the playthrough done by Anuma is Recall, which allows Link to reverse time to go back and up to the Sky Islands. The Sky Islands, as many fans have already pointed out, are parallel to Skyward Sword, with Skyward Sword being the first in the timeline and Ocarina of Time being a key event in the Zelda timeline. It would make sense from a narrative standpoint to reference these games, as Nintendo has this big bonus in that they are fan favorite games. So I hope this is enough to convince you that this is a reunification of the timeline event. And hey, in less than a month, we'll know if I'm right. And normally, this would be the part of a video where I would include like a sponsor or something, but I don't have any sponsors. But you can become a sponsor by signing up for a coffee membership with me. So I have a couple of tiers up. There is the $5 tier and the $10 tier, which I believe are the only ones that I offer currently that allow early viewings of stuff. So also, I may also wind up including that you can get your name in the credits or something like that, because it would mean so much to me to be able to continue to afford to do this, especially considering the fact that it takes time, it takes money, and I don't have a lot of either of those things as of late. So I hope to see you around. Oh, also, you can join the Discord server down the link below, and you can also find like the rest of my socials also in that little description box. Okay, see ya!